Right, this is just crossing in the headlines. There is word that just moments ago, a potential deal on the debt ceiling will actually be presented to the Senate Republican Conference tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Now, with just 3 days to go, hope is on the horizon that our elected officials in Washington, D.C. will end the impasse and actually finalize a deal. The tentative plan increases the debt limit through February 15th. But does that just mean we're right back here at the same place in 4 months? Joining us now with the latest developments is Senator Roger Wicker, a member of the Senate Budget Committee. Thank you for taking time out of what is a crazy period in Washington to be with us and explain to us why 4 months from now we won't be right back where we are today.
Well, okay, but let me say, first of all, this interview was scheduled a lot earlier today. We didn't know we would have a reported deal by this time. I don't know the details. So you may lose viewers by interviewing somebody like me.
I don't think we would lose viewers, but let me just get to the heart of it, because I would suspect that I'm not sure, we're not sure yet about the continuing resolution. What we're talking about is raising the debt ceiling for 4 more months. But 4 more months, 1 more year, we have been through this already once before. Do you hear from anybody within the Republican caucus or even the other side of the aisle from the Democrats, anything tangible that prevents us from going through this ridiculousness, as I think you might agree, repeatedly?
Well, let me say what I hope is included is a legitimate budget negotiation. I'm a member of the Budget Committee. I've been wanting to go to conference actually for years, but certainly during this calendar year. So I would hope that any temporary deal gets us to some real negotiations, because what we need is to change the basic structure of our mandatory spending and get some slowing of the growth rate of this huge federal government. That's what we really need.
And when you bring in the discussion of mandatory spending, I want to talk about that after this one very important question. Let's assume whatever is presented tomorrow at 11 a.m. to the Republicans holds mustard. Can John Boehner deliver the House?
I really don't know, because I don't know the details. I can't imagine, though, that Mitch McConnell has been negotiating in a vacuum. My guess is that he's been closely discussing this with the Speaker of the House. Actually, you know, the House is where we have the majority of, the Republicans have the majority, not over in the Senate. So, I mean, it fell to Mitch to do the negotiation this time, but I'm quite sure he's been talking to Mr. Boehner about it.
And I'm not going to get into the details, but I do see, crossing from our headlines from our bureau in Washington, that some of the deal will include tax concessions from the Democrats as well as Republicans. But this is in order to raise the debt ceiling. My concern is also the government shutdown and continuing resolution. Do you have any news or anything you can share with us about the progress of a budget to keep the United States governing and governable?
My expectation is that whatever deal is announced and presented to us at 11 a.m. tomorrow is going to reopen the government for a temporary period and involve a temporary increase in the debt ceiling. And let me say this about kicking the can down the road, because you led this segment with that. You know, whenever you raise the debt ceiling, necessarily it involves getting back and revisiting this issue at a later time. So it's not exactly a disaster that we have to look at it frequently. I would hope that with another debt ceiling vote looming, say January or February of next year, if that's what the deal is, that it would be a great incentive for members of the House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats, to come together, as the super committee could not do in 2011, and actually slow the growth rate of these very important programs. They're very popular and very important, but they're just growing too fast.
Let's talk about that aspect. And by the way, the continuing resolution, so we would get a debt ceiling raise up through February, and we would get a continuing resolution to fund the government through January 15th. Does that give the 435 people in the House and those of you in the Senate enough time to work out a budget that is going to deal with the mandatory spending? And by that I mean Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare, as well as defense?
Well, it certainly gives us enough time if people are negotiating in good faith, if they're not actually serious about taking some of the tough votes that have to be made and really can only be made during divided government, then a year wouldn't be enough time. But 3 months plus is, yes, it's plenty of time. We know what needs to be done, and there's some members who've been meeting in small groups. They're trying to iron this out with Republicans and Democrats holding hands on this, much as Tip O'Neill did with President Ronald Reagan did back in the early 80s. They performed a very difficult task of slowing the growth rate of Social Security so that it could last another 3 decades. We need to be worthy of their legacy during these next 3 or 4 months.
Senator Wicker, I appreciate your joining us from the great state of Mississippi, although I see you there in the Capitol. But these are events that are unfolding as we're talking, and I know that
I wish I knew more details.
So do I, but I think we're all, the markets at least didn't take a breather. They closed up today, so they seem to be optimistic that all of you will do something that all of us can rest assured will at least let us sleep easy.
Justified.
Thank you very much, Senator. All the best to you.
You're welcome.